Good day, I am Ronami Tampos from BSc English 1A, and this is my answer from the question of the journal article by Norman Kidinson entitled Interaction and Language Acquisition in Early Childhood. So based on the article, its content, it's the various theoretical methods how infants learn language starting from observing the movements and highlighting the different information about how infant acquire the language acquisition. According to the author, the infant as a social being can learn language through interaction with caregivers or parents. And the language development, the interaction between the caregiver because infant needs a guide in discovering of learning, especially of the language because infant don't have any skills and knowledge on how to acquire knowledge. They need guidance in exploring their actions, moves, words, and interpret it. So the caretakers are very first person teach the infants about language by repeating some phrases of words, and the one will teach the infant what the things need to do. So the caretaker will teach and guide the infant and interpret how the actions made by the child and meet the social needs of the child. So this article is very important because it serves as a reminder and source of information of those interested in learning a new language. It gives us courage to understand the importance of understanding the infant or child and why some of them are not easily catching up when we start teaching them, especially for using it and for us to know how to guide the child in easily acquiring the second language or to learn and know the process so that we will not force the infant or child to easily learn what we will teach them immediately. So, Skinner's verbal behavior is reviewed in Chomsky's transformational model of language acquisition. Chomsky argued vehemently that a traditional and strict stimulus reinforcement model of language acquisition could not account for how a child arrives at an understanding of grammar concept that allows for perfect linguistic utterances. And this type of way can be classified as historical language acquisition. It also attempts to rearrange parts of the language in which native speakers are fluent. 3 conflicts or major issues were addressed in the article that I read. To begin, a brief critique of the transformational grammar position is required. Second, a viewpoint on the child's social and socializing interaction with caregiver is required. Third, a perspective on language acquisition based on historical and comparative data from preliterate societies and cultures will be examined. I agree with this issue because it is related to our current issues in our society, not only to the infant but even to the adult in terms of learning a foreign language, and it is better to discuss it and find a solution. So the theory of grammar is only concerned with correcting the grammar of how you arrange your words so that you will not be incorrect grammar to prescribe how people should speak or simply to tell how people to speak and let people know the correct way of their speaking. Whereas the theory of language is used must account for how the infant acquires, improvises on that, uses the linguistic symbols, meanings, and utterances it receives. It must be a formulation that takes nonverbal and vocal gestures into account. So it is necessary to provide a non-grammaristic definition of language. So the following types of linguistic behavior are discussed in the article. Silent vocal speech, which is defined as thought, public verbal utterances, which are described as speech, and paralinguistic gestures. So which include facial motions, smiles, nods, frowns, and body movements. As an illustration, Louis San explains how he learned the meaning of the word no. So, it is critical to be able to provide feedback to a child in order to encourage them to become more interested in learning the language and to give a child hope that he can do it. Additionally, by providing feedback, you are able to correct their mistakes, and so we are able to correct their mistake and keep them motivated to learn in more experimental ways and discover their skills. It can also bring joy to the learners or the child if you congratulate them. There are 3 models of language acquisition that can be found. The first is language acquisition stimulus reinforcement principles operate in praise because the caretaker imitates the child, but the child does not imitate the caretaker. So the second is the child development mix crude subjective links between the stimuli of others and his responses to them. And the last model of language is the basis for concerted face-to-face communication. So, the interaction uses base theory, behaviorism, native language magnet, interest, and control are all terms in K that can be found in the module. And this theory truly belongs in the category because it helps the child acquire the language and influences how to learn in a process way and improves the uses of symbols, meaning words in linguistics even at a young age. I had a lot of realization after reading the articles. So the very first is language becomes the primary interface between the child and the outside world. The child can make plans by using language, action, and mold activity lines. As a result, the child becomes more engaged, builder of its own social reality. So second, I recognize the significance of having a relationship between the infant and caregiver because the infant has no knowledge of how to acquire the language and requires a guide in observing how to use the language and correcting them on every word they will use. And for the last, it is critical to have knowledge in having process of teaching the infant or child to acquire the knowledge, the language, as well as to expand the patience of teaching the child in order to make progress and avoid becoming an ignorant of this method. So that's all for tonight. God bless. Thank you and God bless.